Hi everybody. It's a beautiful day. We're just hiking on some trails behind the bait shop.
We all brought field guides and journals to search for the dead and the rotting.
Yep, we're on the lookout for decay.
You may not notice it, but your environment is full of things that are decomposing. The process can be both visible to your eye in a macrobiological way, or small on the molecular level and invisible to the eye.
That's called microbiology. Decomposition is such a key process in our environment. It shouldn't be hard to find.
Think about what you see when you hike in the woods. You see fallen trees in various stages of decay. If those trees didn't rot, think how they would pile up and none of their nutrients would return to the environment.
I think I found the swamp you guys were talking about.
Yep, swamps are famous for decay.
Yeah, it says right here in my field guide that we'll find small bits of organic matter called detritus that are decaying and may be suspended in the water.
Detritus is a primary food source for aquatic organisms. Now, is detritus macro or micro?
I'd say macro, because you can see the particles with your naked eye.
P.U. What does that stink around here?
You've just discovered swamp gas, released during the process of decay.
A major category of decomposers is fungi. Lichen and mushrooms should be easy to find.
And it says here that bracket shelf fungi are everywhere this time of year.
Here you go. You'll notice they're not green. They don't contain chlorophyll and they don't perform photosynthesis.
My guide says fungi that latch onto dead animals and dead plants are called saprophytes. Fungi and other organisms that get their nutrients from living animals and living plants are called parasites, like mistletoe, seen in many parts of the southern United States.
You can turn over a rotten log and see macrobiology at work.
You're finding the two types of decomposition in one convenient place. Microdecomposers work on the cellular level, and the second type of decomposition, which involves larger organisms or macrodecomposers.
Earthworms fall into the macro category. I read that they excrete nutrient-rich waste called castings, which enriches the soil for plants.
And their movement through the soil opens up air channels that speeds up decomposition of organic matter.
That's right. And the amount of moisture can also affect the rate of decomposition.
Tell me about it. I forgot about this sandwich in my backpack.
Ew.
The moisture and trapped air helped turn my PB&J into a bag of decay.
Hey, didn't you guys say you were hungry?
I don't think so. Not for moldy bread.
We decided to ask a microbiologist if we had discovered the cure for the common cold.
Well, I don't think you have the cure for the common cold here, but your bread does have a case of mold growing on it. The mold is actually breaking down the sugars within your bread, and that's similar to what's happening on the surface of your forest floor, where the organisms are degrading the organic matter within the decaying plants and animals. During the decomposition process, primarily the organisms within the soil are living on your decaying plant and animal matter. Carbon-containing particles of this organic matter are reduced or oxidized to either CO2, carbon dioxide, or they can be reduced to inorganic compounds, nutrients that can go back into your soil to help out with future generations of plants and animals within your ecosystem. Your bacteria begin by excreting enzymes on your decaying plant and animal matter within your soil samples. They enable larger animals or macroorganisms to come in and degrade your organic matter even further. So in general, what's waste for one species in nature is food for another species. You may wonder what makes dirt smell like dirt, and it's actually the hundreds of millions of bacteria found within your soil samples. Decomposition provides for soil formation, as well as it recycles the energy within our environment. It also provides for nutrients for future generations of plants and animals within that ecosystem. So basically, without the decomposition process, ultimately your ecosystem or your environment would come to a halt. So decomposition is definitely a very important part of our ecosystem.
Whole industries like cheese production are based on decay and decomposers.
People in Wisconsin know
Microorganisms are the MVPs of cheese. Bacteria and enzymes are added to milk and feed on the lactose, producing lactic acid. The milk sours, creating curds and whey. The curds are separated from the whey, formed into different cheeses, and left to age. Bacteria again comes into play, growing inside the cheese, changing its chemical composition, resulting in the cheese's unique flavor and texture. Time, temperature, humidity, and kind of milk will determine the type and quality of cheese. Sharp cheddar cheese can take a year or more to age.
Donuts, believe it or not, get their start from fungi. Yeast is a fungus that feeds on sugars and starches, the carbohydrates in dough, and under the right conditions, they multiply, releasing carbon dioxide gas, expanding to accommodate that growth. The dough rises, gets cooked and coated, creating crispy, creamy delights.
Available at your local pharmacy, a whole array of creams and lotions aimed at fighting the fungus that causes the itchy burning condition known as athlete's foot, caused when sweaty socks keep a foot moist long enough to let the fungus grow. And fungus growth can break down chemical bonds that hold rock and buildings together. That's why many cities must clean every year to remove fungi. In Louisiana, a major oil-producing state, Louisiana State University has made it a priority to develop microbes that naturally feed only on oil to better clean up oil spills. The results have been so successful, microbe remediation or bioremediation is now a routine procedure.
In the natural world, the role of microorganisms has always been to decompose carbon. There's a tremendous amount of oil that seeps out of the ground worldwide on this planet on a daily basis, not by act of man. So naturally, microorganisms have always been there to decompose this material. We have been looking for and identifying and maintaining those microbes that have an appetite for that particular form of carbon. They just recognize a good thing when it comes along, and crude oil is a good energy source, and they chew away at it.
When oil spills occur, these microbes can be added to those already naturally present to speed up the process.
One of the challenges of an oil spill is how to decompose that carbon that has been spilled on the open ocean. And we've developed a method whereby we can actually apply microorganisms, and in a matter of a couple of days, the microbes will chew away the oil.
Microbes are also safer for beach cleanup, where harsh detergents can be more harmful than the spilled oil. But oil's not the only substance Dr. Portier's microbes have been grown to love.
We have a whole number of microbes that can chew away on pesticides, insecticides, herbicides, fungicides. We have a whole group of organisms that chew away on plastics. We continue to use microorganisms for new methods of cleaning up surfaces, new methods for responding to spills, new methods to clean up hazardous waste sites. Man will always be looking at small, very efficient little biological decomposing machines like microorganisms to deal with many of the problems we create.
Using microbes that remove bacteria or pollution, many corporations around the country are able to clean their wastewaters. Scientists have learned that by knowing what conditions are best for decomposition, they can speed up the process. Composting facilities like the Organic Resource Management Center in St. Louis, Missouri, use decomposition to turn trash into gold. Black gold, that is.
Well, pretty much anything that was once alive can be composted, and in fact will compost unless we do something to prevent it. This facility that we're at today strictly deals with grass clippings, leaves, brush, and other yard wastes. Well, the material that's brought into this facility is sent to the back, where it's then sent through a large tub grinder, ground into smaller parts, and then stacked into large windrows, or static piles, where the microorganisms, the bugs, and all the other things that help digest the vegetative material get a chance to do their thing. They're really the ones that are doing the composting. All we do is we create an environment where all those little guys can actually do their work. And that's really part of the reason for grinding the material up in the first place. We got to get it into bite-sized pieces to make it easier for them to digest the material. The particular microorganisms that really act on this material do best at a certain temperature. So we keep the pile warm, and then the decomposition process also releases energy in the form of heat. And because the microorganisms that do the composting require moisture, the rain falling on the piles give them that moisture. If we end up with a long dry spell in the summer, the process really slows down unless we add moisture. There's two basic methods of composting. There's anaerobic and aerobic. and basically it's without air and with air. And what they use here is an aerobic with air kind of decomposition. The piles get turned on a regular basis, introduces air and moisture, and all the things that you need for the decomposition process. Modern landfills in America today really don't promote decomposition. In fact, they do exactly the opposite. We really are entombing our trash in an anaerobic, sealed environment. No moisture gets in, little air gets in, things just stay there. Composting is one of the easiest things we can do to help reduce our dependence on landfills. Decomposition is going to happen regardless. And what we need to do is to make it work for us. So we can take this formerly a liability, a waste material, send it through a process, whether you do it here or you do it in your own backyard, and turn it into an asset, black gold that we can put on our gardens. It's easy to do, it's the right thing to do, it helps us all.
Did you know that 1 gram of soil may contain up to 1 billion microbes? As many people as there are in China? Holy mackerel!
Nature does its own composting. Organic plant material that was buried and subjected to heat and pressure over time often became fossil fuels, like oil, or in this case, coal.
Benson Chow is the environmental specialist for the Red Hills mine in Ackerman, Mississippi, where decay from tens of millions of years ago is uncovered each day.
What we are mining here is in the Wilcox Formation, the lignite. The Wilcox Formation took 57 million years to form. Well, when our material was deposited, it was most likely a real lush, dense tropical area, lots of ferns, mosses, plant matter. And as that material died and was deposited down on the ground, little critters, bacteria and stuff started decomposing that material down.
Over time, floods buried and reburied accumulating organic material with mud and silt, creating a stratification of sediment. Buried without oxygen, the organic material stopped decomposing, allowing the variables of pressure, heat, and time to take over.
With increase in pressure, you decrease the amount of moisture in your coal, you squeeze out the water in your organics, basically. With increase in heat, oxygen, nitrogen, those get removed out of the organic, which leaves basic carbon, and that's what the coal is basic carbon.
The longer the material remains buried, the higher the grade of coal that's created.
Peat is formed at the very beginning, and that's the lowest grade of coal. As that material is buried longer and it's put under an increase in heat and pressure and time, you form lignite, which is what we mine here, the next grade higher in the coal scale. And as you continue to bury that with more heat and pressure, the lignite is converted into bituminous coal and then ultimately into anthracite, which is the highest grade. It takes 20 feet of organic material to make 1 foot of coal. So when you think about our coal seams being 5 feet thick, that's 100 feet of accumulated organic material to make that 5 feet of coal. Our type of mine is a surface mine, and what we do here is we have a pit where we uncover the coal with 6 seams we uncover the first coal seam, take the coal seam out, remove the dirt to the next coal seam, and keep on going down to the last coal seam. Decomposition is very important, as you see here. It forms the coal that we're mining here, which produces electricity, which everyday people use. You plug in your hair dryer, you're watching TV or playing your video games, all that comes from electricity. And what we're mining here, coal, is one part of that whole cycle. And that all begins with decomposition.
In very dry conditions, organic matter does not have the moisture needed to decay completely. Bodies of Egyptians buried over 3,000 years ago in the hot desert sand were preserved by the arid ground, creating natural mummies. Since most bacteria and fungi can't live in sub-freezing temperatures, permanent freezing can also produce a mummy. In 1991, the Iceman was discovered buried in ice by hikers in the Alps. Estimated to be over 5,000 years old, cells in the Iceman's skin tissue had not broken down but were intact, and tattoos were still visible. Wounds he has suggested he may have been stabbed in the back. Experts examining his body kept conditions ice-like to prevent further decay. The effects of climate and time play a huge role in crime scene investigations for scientists like Mary Manhein, the Bone Lady. with Louisiana State University's Forensic Anthropology Lab.
One of the most important things that we can add to the evidence at a crime scene is trying to understand how long it's been since the person died. We call that the post-mortem interval. And some of the factors that play a role in our determination of PMI have to do with temperature, climate, humidity, season of the year, perhaps clothing over the person. The higher the temperature, the faster the decomposition process. In the southeastern region of the United States, a body decomposes very, very quickly in the summer months especially. A body can be completely skeletonized in 6 weeks to 2 months, something like that. After a few weeks in the Southwest, you would have mainly bones, but you could also have a lot of dried out tissue because of the lack of moisture out there. It might take a little longer in the northern climes, but again, it's the seasonality, it's how much rainfall, it's whether the body was covered or not. Natural fibers like cotton or linen decompose very quickly, whereas polyester fibers decompose much more slowly, and this can affect the rate of decomposition of a body. We had a case one time where this man was buried in a plastic bag and had been buried there in this location for 5 years. Well, typically what you might expect is that you would just have bones left. But once we uncovered the body and opened the bag, we found out that he was fairly well preserved. In fact, he was so well preserved that he had fingerprints still left on his fingers, and we were able to identify this man using fingerprints after being buried in a plastic bag for 5 years. He was probably wrapped in that plastic soon after he died, or soon after he was murdered, and therefore an anaerobic environment is set up, and the typical bacteria that you have that will break down the tissue really didn't get to proceed at the normal pace. As a forensic anthropologist, I look at the human skeleton, providing a profile for law enforcement of age, sex, race, time since death, and trauma. The whole idea is to try to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, not only to figure out who that person is, but what happened to that person. So a forensic anthropologist is only a small piece, though an important piece, of a fairly large puzzle.
So let's compare what we found during our decomposition hunt.
Well, I got some shelf fungi, a macrobiological decomposer, and a saprophyte.
I brought back some decomposers. I think I'll put these guys in our compost bin.
And I saved you a sample of microbiological decomposition. Well, it really has both, just in time for lunch.
Lucky me. Well, goodbye everyone. That's all the rot we have for today. All right, who wants a bite?
Not me. If I'm gonna eat fungi, it's gonna be mushrooms on a pizza.
Great idea. Who's buying? Greg? Greg.
Nutria and fungi pizza for everyone?
No way. That's
all right.
I'll pass. I'll take it.
All right then. That's all right. I was trying to hip check Bo as we went along the point.
Yep, we're on the lookout for decay.
Tell me about it. I forgot about this rotten sandwich in my...
I brought back some decomposers. Oops.
Who wants a bite?
No way. If I'm gonna eat fungi, it's gonna be on a pizza.
All right.
Visit our Tacklebox website to learn more.